Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. And Trev has disappeared just like Chase Young in his sophomore season.
Woof.
Ooh.
How long you been planning that one?
That was on the bus ride home today. Thank you kindly. I'll be here all week. Actually, now I'm just going to be here today, but I will have some content coming out for you tomorrow right here on our YouTube channel. Be sure to check that one out as we continue to press our luck with our QB1 options. But that's a video for tomorrow. Today's content for you, got some good stuff in the cool down. We're going to be talking about the offensive coordinator position. Greg Roman and Eric Bieniemy getting interviews this week. Decision should come down either tomorrow or Friday as we head into the long weekend. So be on the lookout. We might have some content dropping on that one if a decision is in fact made, but we're going to be talking about those two options, what we think is going to happen as the team continues their hunt for an offensive coordinator. During the game, we are going to be talking about Chase Young and his fifth-year option. Does he deserve one? Should he get this one? Ron Rivera says maybe we don't give it to him to motivate him. What do we think about that? That's all happening in the game. And here in the warm-up, we're going to be giving you our thoughts on the Super Bowl, and more specifically, what does Washington have to do to keep up with Philadelphia? As Philadelphia looked really good there against Kansas City, came up short, 38-35. So close.
It was a good game. I enjoyed the Super Bowl very much.
Yeah, I especially enjoyed watching Philadelphia lose.
Oh, yeah. That was an added bonus for sure. I mean, you don't know. You didn't have a dog in the fight. You had a little bit of a puppy, though, in that you wanted Philadelphia to lose. That's for sure.
Yeah, I really wanted a good game. I actually tweeted this one out. I put a little bit of money on the game, but I'm an idiot. And I thought Kansas City was going to win. But I put all the Kansas City bets, that winning bets, tied them to parlays like an idiot.
Well, why is that an idiot move though?
Because I put them with some stupid things. One, I misread one of the things I clicked. I thought I was taking Kansas City with some points, so that even if they were down, I was going to be okay in the first half. Yeah, I messed up. It was a minus sign, not a plus sign. So I lost that one. But that was like my closest one to getting there.
Yeah.
And the other ones, like Panchenko ruined it because he ran for more yards. Mahomes being hurt meant that he wasn't going to be hitting the 250. I think is that what I put on him for passing yards. So just kind of some dumb things like that. But what I'm getting to is, besides me being dumb, I had put a bet. I had a free bet that I put down on Philadelphia money line winning. So the only way I was going to walk away with money is if Philadelphia, won the game.
Actually wins, right?
Actually wins. And I'm in the fourth quarter still cheering on Kansas City. I don't care. It was $4.
Right. It wasn't about
I don't need them to win for $4. Now, if it was like $100, then maybe you'd say, fly Philly, fly. But for $4, no, come on, go Kansas City. Oh,
don't get in trouble with the PC crowd now. You're teetering on the edge there.
It was a good game. I really walked away impressed with Philadelphia. I really think that they could have a good team. And now I know they have a lot of people up for contract, and so they're going to be a team that's not rebuilding, but they were built to really win and go for it this year.
Yeah.
But they have a dude, and it hurts is
the most important position.
Dude.
Yep.
Is a dude. Like, I mean, there's no way the guy can play the game of football. So, if that's the most important position, they got that. They got Reddick, who is a good, quarterback rusher. We say that those are the two important positions, right? You need to you have a QB, and you need to have a guy who goes after the QB. They got that. So what does Washington have to do, Stoner, to kind of keep up with them? Because Washington failed to make the playoffs, has failed to have a winning record in the last 3 seasons under Ron Rivera. And they watch the division rival make a deep playoff run.
Yeah.
They watch another division rival win a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
To win a playoff game.
That's right. Yeah, two of them.
So what does Washington have to do to keep up with the Joneses?
Well, if you want to follow their blueprint, then, I mean, it was only 2017 the last time they went to a Super Bowl, right? How many guys are left from that Super Bowl team? A handful? 5 or 6 probably. So they went to a Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, completely rebuilt the entire roster, new coaches, all of that, and then went back to another Super Bowl, all while Washington is sitting there treading water, just trying to stay afloat. So that's what's really impressive, what they've done. So if you want to follow their blueprint, you're going to have to find yourself an excellent GM. You're going to have to find yourself an excellent coach that nobody heard of, who we get to make fun of in his press conference, and then he turns out to be just this amazing coach and starting his own coaching tree, right? And then, most important of all, like you said, you got to find that dude. You got to find that guy at quarterback in the second round, no less, right? Wasn't that, or was he late first round? I can't remember. What
he was second round.
Yeah,
early second round.
So you got to find that dude for cheap, build around him, go out and make some really smart free agent moves, like a safety, like a defensive tackle, a couple of defensive tackles, like a wide receiver. Hello, A.J. Brown meant everything to that team this year. And then you got to get an offensive coordinator who is the first-time offensive coordinator, and then build an offense around the dude, and then next thing you know, you're back in the Super Bowl again. That's an easy blueprint, but to execute it, that's a whole nother deal.
Yeah, TJ bringing up the fact that, like you mentioned there with the offensive coordinator, not only that, the defensive coordinator. I mean, they lose the Super Bowl and end up, losing both sides of the ball. Their coordinators, so they got a lot to replace. In fact, Gus Bus in there mentioning how old the defense is. Which is true. They do have a lot of people north of 30. They also, like mentioned, have a lot of free agents: Fletcher Cox, Robert Quinn, Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave. I mean, that's your entire defensive line.
Yeah, man.
All of them, again, north of 30 there. Jason Kelsey, at 35 years old, he probably, doesn't have a whole lot more, many years to go. He's a free agent. You probably sign him again. Bradbury. Who else is on here? Sue. That's not a big one. But I mean, it's going to be interesting for them. You have Gardner Johnson, who's one of the younger guys who they will probably want to say sign.
Who they stole from New Orleans.
Absolutely. Just
stole them. That wasn't even fair.
So with the huge turnover there for, as far as they have, is that gap maybe a little bit closer for Washington to be able to make it up, or does having a Jalen Hurts make all the difference?
Jalen Hurts makes all the difference in the world. You can slip on the defensive line, right? Although that was probably their biggest reason for not winning, was not being able to put pressure on a gimpy Patrick Mahomes, right? But still, they still scored 35 points and were within a controversial call of possibly
controversial. It was a hold.
Well, it's still controversial
because people don't like the timing. It was a hold.
Yes, but there were plenty of instances of holding throughout the game that they did not call. So why did they call it then?
Yeah, just earlier on that drive, right? Where, or maybe his second quarter. Which one was the one that Bradbury completely held Juju's arm behind his back, and they didn't.
Yeah, that was kind of early in the game.
Yeah, that was second quarter, I think.
They highlighted that, and there's all kinds of things that makes it controversial. The guy right in front of the official, right in front of the play, didn't call it. The guy further down the field called it. Not until after Patrick Mahomes throws up his arms and yells.
Oh, they were screaming up and down. Yeah,
right. Then they throw the flag. So that makes it controversial. Was it a hold? Yes, it was a hold. Should they have called it? No, they shouldn't have called it. But whatever. But still, you've got these guys for Philadelphia who a lot of them are in their prime. They're not going to be able to pay them all, but they have what everybody needs, of course, and they got the dude at quarterback. And right now they've got him for cheap. I don't know if they're going to sign him this year to a big deal, but at some point they're going to have to give old Jalen Hurts $40 million a year, and that's going to affect everything. Unfortunately, that's how it works, right? You got to give those guys $40 million a year or more if you want to hold on to them. And that's going to affect your entire roster. We know that. But man, they've got the blueprint on what it takes, at least in this division. And I don't know that Washington has that. Of course, we're going to find out probably this year with Sam Howell as QB1, most likely. Or at least that's what Coach Rivera is telling everybody.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like. So way too early prediction from you, Stoner. NFC East. How's it gonna play out? Don't give me records, just give me 1 through 4.
Well, I'm gonna give you it's gonna be fairly easy. It's gonna be Philly and Dallas are gonna battle for that top spot again, just like they did this year. And then the Giants and Washington are gonna battle for the 3-4 spot. Why? Philly and Dallas got the quarterback. Washington and New York do not at this point.
You don't like Danny Dimes?
Well, we talked a lot about Danny Dimes, but no, he's not an elite quarterback, no matter how good he is or how good he can be or how good he has been. He's not elite enough to where he's going to take off. I mean, he's like against everybody but Washington, he's like 16-30 as a quarterback.
Yeah.
And in those 46 games, he's got like 60 touchdowns and 39 turnovers. And it's ridiculous. He's not that great. So you figure the way you're going to rank the quarterbacks. I mean, the way you're going to rank the teams is how you're going to rank the quarterbacks in this division. And you can say the Dallas quarterback isn't elite, but he's right there. Okay. He's right there. If they continue to win 12 games every year, right, and you continue to get to the playoffs and you win one, of course, you want to get to that next step. I get it. But he's better than anything Washington has had in the last 20 plus years, Dak Prescott. So, yeah, that's how I would rank the teams in the way too early prediction.
You know how I feel about that. That's a very low bar. Like, you can't.
You're
Washington is not the bar setter for QB play. So we can't be like, he's better than any QB Washington's had for 20. Yeah. We had Patrick Ramsey out here and Jason Campbell, like
John Beck.
Oh man, I remember getting a 6-pack of Becks just to celebrate him starting. What a bad beer and what a bad QB for Washington.
I'll never forget that. I think that was his only game he ever started. Was that one game against Buffalo. I remember it was Buffalo, and I believe he was sacked 11 times.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
It was just like every play. It was just like, oh, he's gonna get sacked again. He was the worst quarterback I ever saw.
It was Shanahan trying to talk him up as if he were really good. We're going to be going in there with QB1 as Sam Howell, and you would put him below Daniel Jones?
Yeah, I'd probably put him below Daniel Jones' father. Okay. That's where I would put him, because Sam Howell hasn't proved anything to me, and we've had the Sam Howell talk over and over and over again, and I just don't believe he's the guy. I hope he proves me wrong. But yeah, of course I'd put him below Daniel Jones. But they're going to battle it out for 8-1 and 8-9 and 9-8.
Another close kind of NFC East battle.
Yeah.
So you're saying Washington's not that far. By the way, I'm a little disappointed in our chat right now. Nobody has put in the wolf for me to start the howling over here, but
because they know better.
I'm not saying that Sam Howell is necessarily above Jones, but I feel like, I mean, he's an unknown.
Right on that
That's
level.
the problem. Yeah, it's just, but I mean, we're talking about a Daniel Jones this year. He had a pretty decent year. Most of it kind of on the ground as far as when you're having to look at holistically, right? Like 22 touchdowns overall. But I mean, like the year before, he threw like 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions or something like that. You're saying that Sam Howell isn't better than that?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That is exactly what I'm saying. But you said the key word. He's unknown, and therefore he gets a kind of this worship status as being this incredible talent.
There's a lot of love for Sam Howell here in Washington.
Fell to the 5th round because of all his weapons left for the NFL. And therefore, everybody who looked at all the tape and they said, well, he's not the guy, even though all his weapons left. Let's just wait until the 5th round and everybody pass on him. But somehow he's going to lead us to the promised land. Come on.
When does that happen? Just hopeful. We're just hopeful. By the way, I like this from Gus Bus. Howell's still a puppy. I think for the upcoming season, I'm gonna have to put a little puppy whimper on the soundboard. So if he has like a bad game or he like throws an interception or something, I can use that. So maybe we'll see. But
Howell's not the guy.
I am good with going into this next season with Sam Howell because you got to figure out if he is the guy. You can't tell me right now, Stoner, he's not the guy. You don't have enough evidence to show that, right?
Fair.
You 3-4 games in, you might have the evidence, all the evidence you need.
Right.
You have one game that he was not even playing with half of our starters. It was against Dallas starters. And I don't want to hear people tell me Dallas wasn't playing they were literally playing Micah Parsons and Lawrence, and they wanted to win that game and they didn't.
Right.
And he didn't do great. He didn't blow the doors off anybody. He threw 19 passes, completed 11 of them.
Yeah.
So he's just an unknown, but I want to see what he's got. I really do.
His talent, you can't deny his talent, his measurables, his arm strength, his toughness, his ability to use his legs, pretty much his accuracy. But I will tell you that there are 100 Sam Howell measurable quarterbacks out there right now who can do all the things that Sam Howell can do physically, who can throw rockets, who can throw the deep ball, who can be accurate and all that stuff. But that's not all what quarterback is. And if it was, we'd be oversaturated in the NFL with unbelievable quarterback play. But the reason there's only 7 or 8 elite quarterbacks in the league is because there's so much more to it than just your measurable talent. And he hasn't proved that at this level yet. And maybe he will, but I have serious doubts because coaches and GMs and assistant coaches and all kinds of people, they studied his tape for hours and hours and hours, and they watched him and they interviewed him and they saw every game, every throw he ever did. He went to whatever the Senior Bowls were. I don't think he could do the Senior Bowl, but whatever those postseason bowls, he had his pro days and all that. And everybody said, you know what? He's not the guy. And then he gets to the 5th round and somebody says, you know what? Let's take a flyer on him and see what happens. And that's where we are. We're throwing in a guy that we're taking a flyer on.
Who at one point was looked at as a first rounder, wasn't taken there. This one's a good point here from Gus Bus. Most of the fan base, if you look at a lot of these polls, Stoner, most of the fan base wants Howell over Aaron Rodgers or Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Sounds crazy, but that's because if Rodgers or Lamar don't work out, it'll be crippling for us. Howell is no harm, no foul. It's from Gus Bus. Thanks for joining us tonight. I will say this. I would take Howell over Aaron Rodgers if the deal is something like 3 firsts and like one that's $50 million contract he's got. You got to be able to get that down to be able to fill out the rest of the holes. Aaron Rodgers is an unbelievable QB. I think he's still got some good years in him, at least 1 or 2. I don't know if his heart's there. And if you're trading away the next 3 years worth of picks, you need him to play the next 3 years here in Washington.
Sure.
And that's why Aaron Rodgers is very, very risky. Lamar Jackson, I'm trading 3 firsts for him.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, do it. Sign in, like tag and trade Payne and put over 3 firsts and call it good. Obviously, I think it's probably going to cost a little bit more than that. But Lamar Jackson, super young, super talented. I still want to see what we got in Sam Howell, but if Sam Howell turns into one of these backup quarterbacks that people want, you can ship him for a second round later recoup, one of those pieces that you get.
Yeah.
But Lamar Jackson's Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. I would do just about anything for Lamar Jackson. I would give up just about anything for Lamar Jackson and then build whatever you can around him. He's different. He's as the kids like to say, he is him. Right? Nobody can dispute that. If you want to say for the last couple of years he's missed some games, yeah, he's missed a few games. Okay. That happens, but that doesn't make him injury prone. Look, he's the guy. He was a unanimous MVP. He is an extreme talent, and I would do anything to have him here. But we've got to find that next Jalen Hurts. Right? Jalen Hurts is all the rage now. He went from off everybody's top 15 board in quarterbacks to now he's top 5, maybe even top 3. Right? And they got him in the second round. And they developed him over a couple of years to get to the point where he is now. They built an offense to suit his talents. And now we've got to figure out how to do that with whomever we have. And I don't know that this coaching staff is innovative enough. We're going to find out. We don't even know who the offensive coordinator is, which we'll talk about later. But we need that Jalen Hurts like Philadelphia has. And that's what the difference was between New York Giants being a barely get into the playoffs team and the Eagles, who were the number 1 seed and made their road to the next round or to the Super Bowl pretty easy, relatively speaking. Of course, not every game. None of the games are easy, but still.
Yeah. Now, it's tough because this is a conversation about keeping up with the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a play for Lamar Jackson puts them in the conversation, right?
Sure.
Another QB, we talked about him in our QB Press Your Luck, has become available and not for draft picks. Now he's just going to be a free agent. That's Derek Carr.
Wide open.
Does Derek Carr move the needle for you? Does he put Washington in contention, like you said, with Philly and Dallas, who are going to be fighting for 1 and 2? Does Derek Carr do enough for you to make that a battle?
Of course, it all depends on what it's going to cost, right? We don't know what that is, but if you can get him for a Fitzpatrick type deal, a $10 million 1 year prove it deal,
it's
not
happening, right?
That's not happening. I'm saying if you could, but if you're going to have to go out and give him $20 million guaranteed for 3 years, that I'm not doing. I would still, a lot of these guys who are available, I use that term. I mean, Derek Carr is available.
Yeah.
But some of these guys
very
like
much
Lamar,
available.
he's available, maybe he's not, but some of these guys are not necessarily available, but they're rumored that they could possibly be out there. I want them. I want Sam Howell to be able to try and prove it more than I want one of these guys to come in for $20 million a year.
No, absolutely.
Or 15, whatever it is.
I was very vocal.
I would just rather do that.
Yeah, I was very vocal. I don't want Derek Carr here. I think that he would be Carson Wentz 2.0 for Washington. And this might surprise some people here, as Allison says, Derek Carr is Kirk Cousins. 100% taking Kirk Cousins over Derek Carr.
Right. Derek Carr wishes he was Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
He can't touch Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is, again, we're getting into that Dak Prescott level to where you say, they're a franchise quarterback. They absolutely are. They just haven't been able to get over the hump and get into the Super Bowl. I mean, the Cowboys have gotten close a couple of times. They're always right there. They're always one of the best teams with Dak. Minnesota has made a couple of steps, but not quite there, right? You'd rather have Kirk Cousins. The Raiders have never been close. They had 1 year, like 6 or 7 years ago, when he ended up getting hurt, where they were a very good team, but he couldn't even play in the playoffs. And that's been it. Yeah, they made the playoffs, this year they make, or last year? But I mean, they were
Last
again, they
year,
were
final
they
game
were
of the
that
season. Yeah,
9-8 type team or 9-7, whatever, just barely getting in.
sure.
That's who Derek Carr is.
That
And I like that comparison too.
Yeah,
He's
that's a
Andy
great
Dalton.
comparison here from Gus Bus. Derek Carr is Andy Dalton. And it's actually funny you should mention that because on our QB1 Press Your Luck list, I have Dalton on there. I don't have Carr, but now that Carr's would not cost us draft picks, as that was one of the reasons why I was like, I don't like him as a QB1 option, period. And then I moved him off the board because of what he would cost. But I would put him above Andy Dalton because they were very similar in that regards. And someone's going to pay a lot for him. I don't want it to be Washington because to answer my own question from you, I don't think he moves the needle enough. I think the difference between Sam Howell and him at quarterback. Now, I'm not saying Sam Howell is that level of quarterback, but I'm saying the quarterback play you're going to get from either of them isn't that significant that it's moving the needle to put you in contention with Philadelphia, a loaded Philadelphia team if they end up reloading, or a Dallas team that has a lot of good pieces with it. So I got
a question for you.
Yes.
Well, my first question is, and I think you kind of answered it. If you can get Derek Carr for a 1 year, $10 million, would you do that?
1 year, $10 million?
1 year, $10 million, just like the Fitzpatrick deal. And let's bump it up a little. Inflation, higher salary cap, all that good stuff. 1 year, $12 million.
1 year, 12, I'd do it. If anything over 1 year, 15, like if it's 116, 1 year, 16, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
1 year,
116, but
yeah.
I need somebody to come in there who's competent enough when Sam Howell ends up throwing 4 picks in the first game of the season. Right. I need that guy.
So I think if you bring him in for a prove it year deal, you're going to make him do it. And by the way, the 414, we know he's not signing anywhere for 10 million. That's not what we're trying to say. What we're saying is that's what we'd pay for him. Like if if we're putting money down, that's what, and if Carr walks away because he doesn't want 10 million, because we know he doesn't want 10 million, because we know the market value for him is going to be way higher than that.
Much higher. Yep.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yep.
That's what we would pay for him.
Yep.
Of course, we're not GMs, and we're really not all that smart, but we do like to make these choices, do like to have these conversations. And when we get to the game, we're going to be talking about whether or not we would give Chase Young that 5th year option. That's coming up here on The Game.
The Game is brought to you by Pacers Running Stores. Pacers has 5 stores in Northern Virginia and DC. For the best running footwear, apparel, and gear, just stop by or schedule a virtual fitting with the best running experts in the business. Pacers Running exists to help as many people as possible through running. For every run, it's Pacers Running.
I've been doing a lot of walking in my Brooks shoes that I've got from Pacers Running, and I've been getting lots of compliments. Like
on your walking?
Someone's just walking. Shoes? People are like, those are some nice Brooks. And I'm like, I'm like, thank you. Pacers Running. That's where you can get them. They give you free online fittings. So you can get yourself in the right pair of shoes, get yourself walking and get those compliments. All that's happening over at Pacers Running for every run. As we talked about, speaking, there's Billy. Billy's one of the people who complimented me on my Brooks shoes there. Nice calves, Nathan. Yep. Gus Bus. Thanks for joining us, Billy. Gus Bus, Allison, the 414, Ant-Man, Michael. We've got Frank right in there. Frank, you said something interesting earlier. I would see if I can't get there. We got Command D's. We've got DT. I haven't seen DT in here. Thanks for joining us on this one. TJ in here as well. And our man Yam was in earlier.
And Doug
Doug, yeah, Doug's in the house as well. Sorry, you guys are doing an excellent job lighting us up in the comment section. Continue doing so as we talk about Chase Young and that 5th year option. Now, to give a little breakdown here, we're going to talk about what he is going to, if that 5th year option's picked up, it's going to cost Washington $17 million, $452,000. So we'll just, for the sake of brevity, $17 million. Now, Stoner, that's because he made it to 1 Pro Bowl. That's right. Rookie season. because there's, some people might not know this, but there's an escalator for the cost. If he did not achieve anything, if he was just happened to be on the team, maybe didn't play a whole lot of games, the 5th-year option, which probably no one would take if that were the case, would cost you about $12 million, just over $12 million. If he didn't get to the Pro Bowl his rookie season, right? He got injured his sophomore year. He only played a few games this, last year. If he didn't make it to the Pro Bowl, he would only cost Washington $13 million.
Right.
So that outstanding rookie season is what ended up costing up to $17 million. If he happened to be healthy, played well, made it to a second Pro Bowl, it would have cost Washington nearly $20 million, $19,727,000. So, but like I said, $17 million for a 5th-year defensive end.
Yep.
That's played how many games in the last 2 years has he?
In the last 2 years, maybe 10. He played 3 this year, and maybe it was 9. Maybe I think he got hurt in week 10 last year, so 9.5.
I think he was
so about 12.5.
Banked up before then, right?
Maybe a little bit, but I think he played every game.
He just didn't play as well as people were hoping.
Yeah, very, very much so. Did not play very well. So kind of the specifics.
Nine games last year and had 3 games this year.
Yeah.
So 12 games in the last 2 seasons.
And to kind of get into the specifics, he just finished his 3rd year, but the way the contracts work for first rounders, the team has to decide whether or not they want to sign him for that 5th year. And using that escalator scale that you talked about, they have to decide by this May 1st, I think.
Yeah, they have some time.
Something like that. They have some time, but it has to be this year. They can't wait until next year. That's not how it works, right? So they have to decide, are they going to pay him in his 5th year, not this upcoming season, for the 4th year, which is this year. He's already set. He's got that number that he's going to make, whatever it is. I don't even know. It was probably about 6 million, something like that. But then they have to decide if they're going to go all the way up to 17 million, 17 and a half for the following year. Okay. That's their decision. Now, for me, if I am deciding on whether or not he deserves it or whether or not the team should give it to him, as much as I am kind of a Chase Young hater, if you will, I like to attack certain things about Chase Young. I'm giving him that 5th-year option at $17.5 million. I'm going to give it to him for that 5th year. Because of this, if he doesn't play well in his 4th year next year, right? You still have him under contract for $17 million, which 2 years from now is really not going to be that bad. Is it going to be a chunk? Yes, but the cap's going to go up the following year as well. It's already gone up this year, and then the next year it's going to go up again. So it's kind of a cheap deal. I'm not signing him to a long-term contract. I'm just saying for that 5th year, I'd give it to him. If he has a great year next year, then that 5th year, $17.5 million is probably a bargain. And then you can decide if you're going to try and sign him to a long-term deal. Kind of like what they did with Payne this year. This was his 5th year. Mm-hmm. They signed him to that 5th year option. So he got a pretty good deal this year, but not what he's going to make. So they got him for a relatively cheap price for the amount of production they got out of him. I'm doing that with Chase Young. If it doesn't work out, you just go on your merry way, and you paid him $17 million and he was okay. And then he goes on to another team. And you can say, well, we blew that draft pick. But $17 million, relatively speaking, 2 seasons from now for a defensive end is not that big.
It's not going to be that big. And it's important to remind people that the 5th year options, kind of like the tags, are based off of the contracts that are around. And that's why there's these escalators. If you're a 5th year, you're going into your 5th year or going into your 4th year, and you've made 2 Pro Bowls, you're doing well. And so they're like, okay, well, you should be paid essentially what the top, people in your position are going to get paid.
Right.
And so that's what it's looked like. Now, Michael brings up, this point here is if you pay Deron Payne, you're going to be paying Deron Payne, my man, Jonathan Allen, and then Chase Young. And you also still have Montez Sweat in there. You're probably going to be the odd one out in this case. If you pay Payne. So that is going to be a lot of money tied into the defensive within 2 years, because you're still going to be paying Jonathan Allen north of 17 million at that point. You're going to be paying the 17 million here, to Chase Young, and then probably 20 million a year for Deron Payne. That's a lot of money tied up in that defensive line, but just in 3 people.
I'm not paying Payne. We've talked about this on shows in the past. I'm not paying Deron Payne. I'm going to try and tag and trade him, get something for him, whatever. I'm not paying him because of that very reason. Defensive tackles are great to have on your squad, to have a pair of defensive tackles that are great. That's great. But that's not, you need defensive ends. Okay. Those are the guys that you need more than you need defensive tackles.
I'm going to counter with, you need pass rushers. You need people who are going to get after the QB.
Yeah.
Defensive tackles, we're getting into an age where there's more defensive tackles that are becoming pass rushers. Maybe not the level Aaron Donald is, but you have Deron Payne who hit double-digit sacks. You have, Jonathan Allen who had 7 and plus sacks this year. And so I don't think it necessarily has to be from the edge. Like we've seen, prolifically, when you're talking edge rushers, that's where you're getting the most bang for your buck. But we are seeing kind of maybe a resurgence, because you've had people like Sapp and a few others that were playing from the defensive tackle position. But now the goal is getting after the quarterback. That's what you need to see.
Right. But isn't the glamour position is the defensive ends?
Oh, it's totally
right?
It's
because they
the
reap
flash
the most
position. It's the same difference between a free safety and a strong safety. Strong safeties are playing in the box. They're not making those flashy plays where you see a free safety go across the field and pick off the ball, right? So, the defensive tackles tend to be rough, run stuffers, picking up the bodies and, getting those flashier guys, the bigger paychecks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just look at the last 15 defensive players of the year. Nick Bosa, TJ Watt, Khalil Mack, JJ Watt 3 times, Terrell Suggs, James Harrison, right? And you throw in Aaron Donald in there. He's done it 3 times. Okay. That's a guy, that's a difference maker, right? But normally you're going to have a linebacker here and there. You're going to have a DB here and there. But your defensive players of the year are your rush ends because they wreak the most havoc, right? Because if you got a guy coming up the middle, okay, the quarterback can usually see him. If you get sacked, right? But you usually hold on to the ball because it's coming. But those guys on the edges, you don't see them coming, right? And they make those strip sacks. And
that's the reason why Chase Young, if you're going to pay him $17 million, you're going to play him as a right defensive end to blindside the quarterback.
Blindside, right. Yeah, so that's why I would pay more for defensive end. Why I put more of an importance on a defensive end than I do a defensive tackle. And you've already got a great defensive tackle. So that's why I would let Payne go. But that's just my preference. The team may do something totally different. So yes, I would give Chase Young his 5th-year option.
Because you're not paying Payne.
Because I'm not paying Payne. That's right.
Are you going to pay Montez Sweat?
I don't know about that yet. I mean, he's coming up on his 5th year.
Yeah,
right?
he's
got his 5th-year option.
He's going to get $11.5 million this year.
And he's a guy who hasn't really done a whole lot either, right? He's kind of in that same Chase Young category. He's been pretty good. He's been the same as the guy we like to talk about all the time, like Preston Smith or Brian Arakpo. He's been like that. He's been pretty good. They gave him a 5th-year option. Okay, they signed him to that fifth-year option. Because
did you hear that difference?
Even though he
though?
got $12 million.
Yeah, 11.5.
Yeah.
And that's a guy who's never made the Pro Bowl, right? That's
Yeah.
the guy who correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he's never made the Pro Bowl.
Never made the Pro Bowl and never had double-digit sacks, right? Never had double-digit sacks.
Yeah,
I
don't
just
think
confirmed
so.
it.
Yeah.
Nope. He got to 9 in 2020.
And they gave him a fifth-year option, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is now his fifth year, and then they can decide if they're going to let him go or sign him to a long-term deal. I think he's another guy they probably let go.
Is Chase Young $6 million better than Montez Sweat?
It doesn't matter. That's just kind of where we're at in the in the escalation of years and salary caps and all that other stuff. It's just going to keep going up. Next year, who's up next year for a fifth-year option on Washington? Do we even know if there's anybody who's drafted after Chase Young? Jamin Davis? Right. So it'll be Jamin Davis next year, right? His, as a linebacker, his might be $20 million, right, for a fifth-year option. That's just how it works. Again, it's like Daniel Jones. Is he worth $40 million a year? Nope, but he's going to get it because that's what the price you got to pay to keep these guys. So Chase Young, is he worth $17 million a year in terms of what you get back from him? No, not at this point. But you're going to have to keep him in order to see if he can, over the next 2 years, develop into that guy that you want him to be. So, and then the other question is, are they going to give him the fifth-year option? Right? So, actually, let me take a step back. Nathan, would you
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that.
The fifth-year option, if it was your decision?
So when I'm looking at this, and I thought, I mentioned that the salary is specifically kind of built to kind of be competitive with it. So, I mean, you are going to be giving them more than an Eric Armstead, a Chandler Jones, a Cameron Hayward, an Ogba from Miami, Frank Clark, who just won a Super Bowl. You're going to be giving them more money than that. In fact, the only people he's making less money than are Von Miller, Leonard Williams, Max Crosby, and Myles Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's fair, because of the way that these are structured, to really compare him to those. Like if we're not talking about his fifth-year option, if we were talking about this as his contract extension or signing him to a deal,
long-term deal, right?
Paying him that kind of money would be, to me, the market value goes up every year. So there is going to be some. That's the reason why Daron Payne is going to be making more than Jonathan Allen.
That's right.
And
even though you could consider Allen a better player.
Yeah. I mean, Allen was straight up voted for a Pro Bowl, and Daron Payne was an alternate. So, the money has to go up. That's just how that's as the salary cap continues to rise, money is going to go up. You've mentioned that. I don't have a problem if Washington extends him the fifth-year option.
Okay.
I do actually have a problem if they don't, especially if the reasoning is, as Ron Rivera kind of said in his presser, which was, well, maybe that's what will motivate him.
Which is inferring what?
It's inferring that, salary years, guys tend to play hard. He mentioned Daron Payne in that regard, that, he played this year, played out, and earned himself a contract. Absolutely. The thing is if you don't give him the fifth-year option and he balls out, he goes back to that rookie player of the defensive rookie of the year type play. You just made him earn $25 million more in a year that you could have gotten him for $17 million.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. So if you don't do it, you're going to cost yourself. You could potentially cost yourself money. And if you do it, and he ends up not being that great player, then if he ends up not being that great player, then you've cost yourself $17 million, but you haven't broken your salary cap. You can just chalk that up as to a 1 year, $17 million albatross on your cap, not a 5 year, $17 million every year. No, just the 1 year. It's kind of like the Carson Wentz deal. You got the 1 year, you hope it works, and if it doesn't, then you move on.
A lot of people in the comments section here, and I'm going to use Michael's as an example. Michael saying, what job says you haven't done squat for 4 years, but we're willing to give you another year? One, there's probably quite a few jobs that let people linger. But a lot of people are considering Chase Young a bust. Would you consider him a draft bust? Because that's why people don't want to give him the 5th year option either. They just haven't seen enough. I mean, they're not wrong. They've seen 12 games in the last 2 seasons, 1.5 sacks his sophomore year in the 9 games that he did play. And so would you consider Chase Young a bust as he enters his 4th season?
I would. Bust is a tough word. Okay. Would I call him a disappointment or say he hasn't lived up to his billing and all of that? Of course, you would say that. But a bust infers that he'll never get better. So we have to give him that opportunity to get better. It's been basically, he's had 1.5 years of playing, and that's it. So we've got to give him that opportunity to get better. Talk to me at the end of next year, and then I'll let you know if I think he's a bust or not. But, I mean, there's a reason he was picked number 2. Okay, it's not like
generational talent. That is what we always heard.
Like Washington reached for him at 2. Okay, everybody said he's the number 2 pick.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Joe Burrow being a QB, it's very likely Chase Young goes number 1 in that draft.
Absolutely, that's 100% true. And there was even some rumblings that maybe he would go number 1 and Burrow would fall to 2. Or he wouldn't have fallen to 2; he'd have fallen to 3 because Washington wasn't taking a quarterback that year. So we can talk all about that forever. Imagine
there's a lot of what ifs in there, but
yeah,
I do agree with those who are coming now to his defense in the comment section, like Trout. It's way too soon to say he is a bust, and I think it's not fair to call him a bust when he was defensive rookie of the year, right?
Yeah, that's saying something, right?
That's showing that he does in fact have that talent. So bust, I think, is too strong of a word. I understand where people are coming though from. If you were to change it from bust to he hasn't lived up to expectations,
yes,
which
absolutely.
I think a lot of people kind of when they say bust, that's what they mean. To me, a bust means like this dude's hasn't done anything in the league. He's never going to amount to anything in the league. That's a bust. This guy's defensive rookie of the year. He got injured. You can't, he's only entering his 4th year. Too early to call him bust, but he hasn't lived up to expectations. I think that's fair. When you have 1.5 sacks pre-injury and your sophomore year, and it's not just the numbers, because we talk a lot about when it comes to now the sacks are important. When you're talking about getting after a quarterback, QB pressures are great and they're needed, and it's a necessary stat to keep track of. But you need to get after the quarterback. You need to sack the quarterback. And if you're paid to sack
the quarterback,
if you're paid to sack the quarterback, then I better see some box checking on that one when I look at the box score.
Let me ask you a question, Nathan. Who led the league this past season in sacks?
Boza.
Okay. How many did he have?
17.5.
Okay. Who led the league in...
These are guesses. If someone has the right numbers, let me know.
You're right on.
I'm right around there, right?
Yeah. Who led the league in QB pressures? And how many were they? Got defensive ends, edge rushers get paid to sack the quarterback. They don't get paid to set the edge. That's great if they do that as well. Okay. They don't get paid to stop the run. They don't get paid to fall back and cover tight ends or running backs or, all these scheming things. They get paid to beat the crap out of the quarterback and scare him from making plays. That's what they get paid to do. So that's what he needs to do. You can talk all about his pressures. You can talk about his win rates, his PFF grades. You can talk about his stopping the run or setting the edge. That's fine. He needs to have double-digit sacks at a minimum. We threw Preston Smith out of here and Brian Arakpo out of here, right, with the quickness. And they were getting double-digit sacks. not every single year, but they were right there. Maybe they were pretty close to double-digit sacks. I think Arakpo got a couple years of double-digit sacks. We were quick to throw him out of here. Now we're going to say, well, he only had 1.5 sacks in 9 games, but he did some really good things against the run. And that's not what you get paid for. Nobody knows who the leader is in pressures or win rates. They know who the leaders are in sacks and how many they were. Nobody remembers all that other stuff. So that's what he needs to do. All that other stuff is great if you can, in addition to the sacks, not instead of sacks. That's what he needs to have.
Now, John here telling people to watch the tape from Ohio State, maybe move Chase Young to a linebacker position. Is that would maybe, now we're kind of getting into his play past the 5th-year option here. But maybe, they tried moving him around a little bit, and you saw him kind of lining up, kind of doing kind of a Micah Parsons thing, even though Micah Parsons came in the year after Chase Young, where you're just kind of lining them up all over to wreak havoc. And one of the things I've said about Chase Young is he is more than a pass rusher, right? He does a good job, defending the run, he's really good at defending a screen. And so I don't know if that amounts though, Stoner. What do you think? Does those kind of things as a defensive end amount to $17 million for a year?
Yes, just because of this particular situation. Again, if you're signing him to a long-term deal today, then no, it's not worth $17 million a year. Is it worth it for a 5th-year option? I believe it is. And so I would probably do it. But yet he does have to figure out a way, if they move him around, whatever it is, he just has to figure out a way to get to the quarterback. That's really the bottom line. He's got to wreak havoc. Nathan, what's the most important position on offense?
The QB.
What's the second most?
On offense is the left tackle.
Why?
Because they protect the quarterback
from
the right defensive end.
Right. From the guys who cause havoc on the defense. Sure. And probably the defense, you can kind of squabble with who's the most important player on the defense, right? But again, look at all those defensive player of the years that are riddled with Watts and Bosa's and Khalil Max and guys like that. Because those are the most dangerous players on defense. Okay? And that's what Chase Young needs to be.
So Caleb pointing out here, you may not know who's leading QB pressures, but coaches and scouts do. Pressures still mean a lot to them. Absolutely, Caleb, you're right there. Now, what we are saying is sacks are going to get you that big paycheck, and QB pressures are not.
Yeah, QB pressures. Keep this in mind. QB pressures and all of those, and stopping the run and all that should be done in addition to the sacks, not in place of the sacks, not instead of the sacks. Keep that in mind. That's really the way DNs should be looked at. Yeah.
So, in my opinion, because I never actually answered, I definitely got away from that one without answering. I said that I wouldn't be upset if they did. I would be upset if they didn't. I'm offering him the 5th-year option. I'm not playing this game of, we want to motivate you. I think that is absolutely ludicrous. That's dumb. That is absolutely a dumb thing to say. You're not telling a player, I'm trying to motivate you when you withhold a 5th-year option. What you're telling that player is you're not good enough to be on this team. And maybe they do ball out.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you have to franchise tag him to keep him on this team and try to prove no, we did want you all along. This is our mentality behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's playing games. And these are grown adults, and you don't need to play games with them when they're trying to just play a game. The money is their livelihood, and you just don't do that.
Yeah. And also, when you're saying that maybe it'll motivate him to not give him that 5th year, you're inferring that he needs to be motivated. And that's an issue too, right? That's not a team issue. Now it's a Chase Young issue. Mm-hmm. He needs to be motivated. Since when does the number 2 overall pick, a defensive end, a football player, need to be motivated by money? He shouldn't need that. And so that's kind of inferring that he's not motivated to be a great football player. And that's a little bit scary. And you guys mocked me last year, or maybe it was the offseason before that. You mocked me about when Chase didn't show up for OTAs, right? Because he was going to get his bag, as everybody likes to say, right? He was doing
it wasn't last year, it was the year before.
Yeah, it was the year before. When he was going to do the Family Feud, and he's going to do some Gatorade commercials and all that, and everyone's like, leave him alone. He's young, and here's his chance to get his bag. But he was the only player on this team that did not show up to voluntary workouts. And what does that tell you? He's not motivated, right? He's thinking, I'm good enough. Okay. Look, there's 72 other guys, or maybe it was more than that, like 82 other guys who are there who don't have to be. Some of them established stars in the league. Okay. But he said, I'm going to go make some money instead of going. And that gives you a little bit of his mindset. Maybe he's not motivated.
I do think
hopefully
a lot.
This
is now a conversation 2 years old now, but I do think a lot of that second year, he got into his head. I mean, he's coming off of a Defensive Rookie of the Year campaign, and he was hitting superstardom. Right. And I think that a lot of that got to his head. I mean, this is, and it's not me just talking out my rear end right now. Going into that season, he and Montez Sweat were talking about breaking the sack record. They just thought that they were that good that it was just going to be a cakewalk for them. And it's good to have confidence. I'm not saying you want your players to have some swagger to them.
Yep.
They do need to back it up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they get clowned like Juju Smith-Schuster after his Valentine's Day post, which I love, by the way. I thought it was great.
Yeah,
the trash talking's great, but he's getting smacked up and down because he didn't really do anything outside of just happen to be on a good team. Chase Young is getting smacked up and down because he had 1.5 sack after not showing up to OTAs, after going to Chase's bag and just not really amounting to that superstardom that he thought was, going to be. I don't want to say, I'm not trying to get into his head, but like it was going to be gifted to him.
Right. And maybe this injury and these last 2 years of struggling, if you will, of not being the Chase Young of old, maybe that has, refocused him, has recentered him to realize that the reason he's going to be on Family Feud and the reason he's going to be in Gatorade commercials is because of his football talents. So maybe he's got to figure that his football talent has to come first. And no, I don't think anybody's ever kind of questioned his devotion to his team and his teammates, right? We've all seen that. He's a physical freak, so he's not lazy, right? But maybe what all of this has done is they took football away from him. And so now maybe he's saying, I need this. I need to be great. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take that focus. Hopefully that's what it's.
I do think he has some great teammates around him. And one of them is our good friend here, Gregory, with the howl. Put that wolf symbol in the chat. I said I would go ahead and make sure we do the howl there. But no, seriously, he has great teammates like Jonathan Allen. And I mean, if you look at the mentality of the rest of the players, and even Ryan Kerrigan coming in as a coaching staff, these are very quiet, humble dudes who are like, just get the job done. Chase Young is not that, right? Like he's a very loud, he's a cheerleader. You hear that all the time about him. He is a guy who has that swagger. Does he get his swagger back this year? Is that something, regardless of what happens with this 5th-year option, Stoner, which both of us are giving, both of us think that the team will give him that 5th-year option. Does he get that swagger back in his 4th year? And you're talking about renegotiating a contract so he doesn't even have to play on that 5th-year salary. What do you think as far as that?
Yeah, I'm just hoping it kind of all comes together so that when you get to that 5th year and he's already under that 5th year option, and then you get to maybe that 6th year and maybe you can tag him, kind of like what they're talking about with Payne now, right? So it gives you a lot of options having that 5th year signature. So again, I would definitely do that, and I think it gives the team a lot of flexibility. Now the question is, will Washington do it? Do you think Washington will actually do it?
Yeah, I think Washington's going to give him the 5th year option. And if he plays well, I think that this is a player who they will extend and they would want to keep. I do think that Deron Payne will not be on this team. I don't think they're going to end up signing him. I just think that's the cost. Everyone keeps talking about the $17 million that Chase Young would be paid, 2 seasons from now, not even this season, 2 seasons from now.
Mm-hmm.
But, that's a problem for later. Deron Payne's a problem for now. And they're looking at that. Can we pay him and build the team the way we want? And I don't think they will for Deron Payne. I think they're looking at Chase as like, he is somebody we can afford the $17 million 2 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And work that deal out, work that out in the future. So I do think that they're going to do that. And as far as getting his swagger back, I think we should expect bigger things coming from Chase Young. Now, maybe not as big as what Michael had, which is 15 sacks this season, or he's not worth the cost, is what Michael said. Now, dollar bet, maybe dollar here action. 8.5 sacks, over or under?
I will go over that.
You're going to go over 8.5. If I went 9.5, do you think he hits double-digit sacks?
I do.
Wow.
I really think, I believe kind of all that stuff that I was talking that I was hoping. I believe that. I believe having football taken away from you and finally understanding why it is you're this famous guy and why it is that clients, marketing folks are calling you is because of your football. And now he can see kind of the end coming, or not necessarily the end, but the decision making time is coming, right? He's got to, it's time. And he's going to have an another off season of rehab and prep for this year. I think you're going to see a really good year from Chase Young. Not a dominant year, but you're going to see right around 10 sacks. And that's like one every other game. Can he get 1 sack every other game on average? Can't he do that? I think so.
He only, his career high is at 7.5.
Yeah.
So you think he crushes that?
If 10 is crushing that, then
I mean, it's 2.5 sacks more. I mean, that's a significant number. Maybe not crushing.
Yeah, it's not really crushing it, but yeah, I think he gets to 10.
That would 10 be successful for you? Would that be?
Yes.
Would that justify the 5th year option?
Yes, 10 sacks would be a major jump forward for him. Because again, we're talking about 1.5 over the last 2 seasons. Injury or not, you're still talking about 1.5 sacks over the last 2 years. So to go from that to 10, I think that would be a huge jump. And everybody would be saying, okay, this is who we thought he's supposed to do. He's supposed to be. And now when he's 24 years old, going into his 5th year, coming off of 10 sacks, now we're going to make that leap to, scary game changer type player to where he can get, into that 12, 13, 14 type sacks. So yeah, 10 sacks would be a huge jump and would be justifiable of that 5th year, $17 million a year. And then you might even start talking about long-term deal. Because when you get to that point, when you're deciding if you want a long-term deal, all that other stuff we talked about plays into it. His marketability, right? And his swagger and all that now comes into long-term deal if he's starting to live up to that. So yeah, absolutely. 10 sacks would be a huge jump.
Yeah, 10 would be pretty darn tasty there for Washington. give you an idea of who's around the 10 sack mark. This is Zadarius Smith, Cameron Hayward, Daniel Hunter, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Javon Hargrave. All these guys had 11 to 10 sacks.
Yep.
I mean,
that's pretty good territory.
By the way, Preston Smith 8.5. Just to throw that out there.
Watch what kind of contracts Hargraves and Sweat, because I think they're both free agents. Watch what kind of contracts they get, and you're gonna be like, oh, okay, so that's what 10 sacks is gonna get you.
Yeah, a lot of people have been making the comparison to like Micah Parsons, who's again taken the year after him. Micah Parsons, when you was kind of fell in the draft, kind of came in the mid first round, where generational talent taken at the number 2 overall pick, you expected him to be a difference maker and kind of a wrecking ball. A lot of people consider Micah Parsons that. Micah Parsons only had 13.5 sacks this year.
Well, I don't like the use of the word only.
I mean, it wasn't
13.5 sacks.
Wasn't top massive. 5.
Well,
it was top 10.
6, 7.
Yeah.
7. I mean, 13.5 is
it's good. It's a good year, but
yeah.
I mean, and by the way, Nick Bosa had 18.5. I think I said 17 earlier, but
yeah, the 18.5 is absurd.
Yeah, it's really good. Hassan Reddick on that other side of the NFC East with 16. So
yeah,
Washington is losing the sack race to its division rivals. And if you pay Chase Young that kind of money, you are expecting to close that gap.
Yeah, and also with the Giants, of course, you had the great rookie year by Kayvon Thibodeau, right? He had a great year we can have, especially against Washington.
If you consider QB rushes, because Thibodeau only ended up with, I think, 4 sacks on the year.
Yeah, I mean, he had a Chase Young rookie year type year.
4 sacks, yeah.
Right? I mean, he wasn't defensive rookie of the year because you had Sauce Gardner out there locking people up everywhere, but he was probably, I mean, we'd have to check. He was probably top 5 in the voting for defensive rookie of the year this year. I mean, he was, look what he did against, just in that Washington game, the second one, right? When Washington lost that game. Remember, he had the strip sack, fumble, recovery touchdown play, and he was just abusing our offensive linemen all day in that game. So, yeah, in the NFC East, you've got, the Reddicks and Sweats and Hargraves and Micah Parsons and Dexter Lawrence's and Kayvon Thibodeau's. You've got some game changers on some defenses around here, and that's what Chase needs to become.
Yep, absolutely. Need to see more from him on there. We talked very briefly about QB pressures. I wasn't able to pull up the stats for that, but QB hits was something I was able to pull up. Nick Bosa and Max Crosby. Nick Bosa is just in another world of his by himself on this, but Max Crosby also a good year there. But then your guys who were 3 through 7 all had 28, 29. Guess who's on that list?
Payne?
Montez Sweat.
Oh, Montez Sweat. Okay.
And QB hits. I remember him kind of being at the top when it came to those pressures. And as that was being mentioned, are you paying Sweat before you pay? And obviously they did pick up his 5th-year option. Long-term deal. You can only give it to one of your pass rushers. Who are you giving it to right now?
Well, here's the great thing. You can't make me do it right now. Okay, here's the great thing. I get another year to evaluate both of them, right? Because Sweat's on his 5th-year option this year, right? So you don't have to decide, and you don't have to decide on Chase, okay? If Chase comes out and has that 10-sack year, right, and Montez Sweat has a typical Montez Sweat year, 7 sacks, 28 QB hits, is pretty darn good football player, but he's a Rackpo, he's just Preston Smith, whatever. Then you can say, okay, I'm going to give the long-term deal to Chase Young and let Montez Sweat go. So I'm not going to, you can't make me choose what I'm going to do today.
I mean,
because
I
obviously
can pose the question.
If you choose today, you're going to take Montez Sweat just because he's had an
shown
extra
that consistency
year.
And he's not injured. Sure.
Yeah. He's had that extra year of production to show who he is. But if I get another year to evaluate, then give me that extra year and then I'll make that decision.
Both of them end up with 11 sacks on the year.
Mm-hmm. They both end up
both of them.
Chase Young.
You're signing Chase Young.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep. Well, and another reason also is because you have that 5th-year option kind of as leverage in your contract negotiations, and then you won't have to necessarily give up so much. Whereas Montez will be a free agent. He can go wherever the heck he wants unless you decide to tag him, which I don't think they're going to do if they're going to give a long-term deal to Chase Young. But Chase Young, again, if he does make that leap, there's more to Chase Young for this organization than there is for Montez Sweat, right? Chase Young is more marketable, right? He's more out there. He has a bigger personality. And so that's probably why you would choose him if all things are being equal like that. You said 11 and 11. Then I'm going with Chase Young.
Gregory touching on this one here. Exactly why you're not management, Stoner. And we've been saying that since the get-go, right? In fact, I'm wearing
like very first episode.
I'm wearing the shirt right now.
Yeah, that's right. You got to go up just a little. You got
just up a little bit.
Can't go. There you go. Hashtag just a fan.
That's
what
was
we
one
are.
of the first things we said. We're not GMs. We're not coaches. We're not smart people. We're just a fan.
We just happen to have the technology to be able to get our message out.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And we appreciate those people willing to listen here with us as we do that one. TJ, we touched on your question here a little bit earlier. TJ says, what is their defensive responsibility? Sack the QB, get pressures, or set the edge? I mean,
nailed it.
Technically,
1, 2, 3.
It's all of it. But what we're paying them for, what the NFL teams want to see is sacking the QB.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting after the QB. So that's what you're going to be going there.
Yeah, as we said earlier, who's the all-time leader in sacks? The all-time leader. Yeah.
For Washington, it's
okay for Washington.
Well, we had a chance to have Kerrigan break it, but he technically wasn't even actually close because there was a lot of sacks that weren't counted. But who are you looking to name here? Because obviously you didn't want Washington. You wanted.
Well, I was just gonna say, who's the all-time leader in sacks?
I don't know.
I think it's Bruce Smith, maybe.
I think it is. I think he's like near Reggie White is a good option there too.
Yeah, maybe it's Reggie White, Bruce Smith, somewhere around there. How many would you say?
Close to 200, right?
Yeah, somewhere around 200, I think. And as you look it up. But then again, I'll ask you, who's the all-time leader in quarterback pressures? Or who's the all-time leader in setting the edge? Who's the all-time leader in tackles for losses? You have no idea. And the reason
Bruce Smith, by the way, with 200, Reggie White's second with 198.
Yeah, see, we nailed it, right? Bruce Smith and Reggie White, right around 200. So that's what defensive ends are paid to do and are known for. They're difference makers when they sack the quarterback. Not get pressures, not QB hits, not setting the edge on run plays and things like that. That's great. Again, in addition to getting the sacks, not instead of getting the sacks. I'm gonna keep
pounding that one. It is in fact the most important position on the defensive side of the ball. You need to get after the QB. When right after for the cool down, we're going to be talking about the other side of the ball, our offensive coordinator search, as Roman and EB both interviewed with Washington this week. Who are they going to select? All that's coming up here on the cool down.
The Cool Down is brought to you by Manscaped. Ever since my Nathan started using their products, I can't cool down. Fellas, trust me. Go to Manscaped right now and get 20% off and free shipping by using the code REF. Your ladies will appreciate you. Now back to Trev, Stoner, and my Manscaped man, Nathan.
Manscaped has all of your men's grooming needs. I was actually just on the website today looking at their beard trimmer as my time in the Air Force is coming to a close, and I'm going to have to, find a way to keep that nice and trim. And they've got me covered. It's the Beard Hedger, a nice beard trimmer that has 20 different lengths. That's right. And it's all selected with a zoom wheel. Awesome. It's going to be what keeps your man nice and clean. All that's going to be from manscaped.com. Use the code REF for 20% off and free shipping.
20%. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a good deal. Stoner.
Yep.
2 offensive coordinators were interviewed this week by the Washington Commanders. Decision is expected to happen here in the next couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Which way are you going? Do you even take one of the QBs you waited this long to interview? Or should we prepare ourselves for a letdown and Shermer or Zampese, who were interviewed very early on, are the options? Which way are you going with this one?
Man, this is so hard to figure out. I mean, obviously the guys that they have interviewed haven't just blown them away to where they're going to say, okay, I don't need to talk to anybody else. There's obviously a connection between Rivera and Andy Reid, and then therefore Eric Bieniemy, which is going to give him the opportunity to interview this week, tomorrow, I believe, on Thursday, right? But then you got Greg Roman, who's still out there, which, by the way, he didn't want to interview with Washington. And I guess his options
originally turned it down, yeah.
Or maybe he just wasn't sure he wanted to coach. I don't know. But he did interview yesterday, I believe. Maybe it was today. I can't even remember. Get my days all mixed up. But I think it's going to come down to those two. I think it's going to be, if it does come down to those two, I think it's going to be Greg Roman. I'm just not sold on this whole idea that Bieniemy is going to leave Kansas City for Washington. Okay, there are still a couple other openings left, right, for offensive coordinators.
I'm fairly certain. Well, Eagles.
Yeah,
the Eagles are now open,
right? But I think there's 1 or 2 others.
How would that go?
Head coach.
Bieniemy
the Eagles
just beats the bricks off of the Eagles with the second half adjustments. If you listen to Andy Reid, he said all that second half was EB and gave a lot of praise there.
So then why would they let him go?
And then, so I think there's a couple factors, because that's been the big question. And some people
that's
are starting to lampoon people for asking that, because they're like, because Bieniemy isn't under contract with Kansas
That's
City.
right. Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why it's still a worthwhile question to ask, why would he walk away from that? Because a lot of people just point, well, he's not under contract, so he's got to go somewhere else. No, he doesn't. Kansas City can still sign him.
Sure.
I think the reason why Kansas City doesn't sign him is because Andy Reid wants to see, remember, we're a year removed from Andy Reid getting in front of NFL owners and saying, why haven't you given this guy a chance?
Mm-hmm.
And I think Andy Reid legitimately wants Eric Bieniemy to be a head coach in the NFL. He's not ready to give up.
He's not going to be a head coach here.
He's not going to be a head coach. Right. But Andy Reid sees this, and he said as much. Like, Andy Reid's come out and said this. He's like, he needs to go somewhere where he can prove that he's not living on my coattails. He didn't use those words, but that's the sentiment that he was given, was he needs a shot to be the guy somewhere. And this is where I think that it makes a lot of sense for Washington, as far as, Andy Reid and Ron Rivera are friends. Mm-hmm. They're talking about EB. That EB is a coach who, the McCoy business, where he, gets in players' faces. He's kind of an old school kind of coach in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he matches up with the mentality here. As far as leaving Kansas City, I think it's really Kansas. Andy, like I said, Andy Reid is like, you need to leave here. And Andy Reid probably has half a dozen offensive-minded coaches there who can take the role, because Andy Reid is really your offensive coordinator.
Right.
You just need some guy to kind of go out there and do that side of the coaching when you're elsewhere, when you've got other things to focus on because you're the head coach, somebody during practice to do all that. So I don't think they need EB as much as EB has probably needed Kansas City.
I agree about all that you said from the Kansas City side. Okay. They want to give him the opportunity to fly. Okay. They want to give him the opportunity to be the guy on the offensive side. I agree with all that. Andy Reid wants to get him promoted. I agree with that. He needs to be given the chance. I agree with all that. I don't understand why Eric Bieniemy, if given a choice, would come to Washington. I understand there's a lot of spin out there, okay? And the spin is that he wants to go to a defensive-minded head coach so that that coach will leave him alone on the offensive side, right? That's a bunch of bull crap to me. If you're the offensive coordinator and you're leaving Kansas City to have more responsibility, then you're only going to go to a place, regardless of who the head coach is, you're going to go to a place that's going to give you the autonomy as offensive coordinator, okay? No matter who the head coach is, okay? So I totally throw that out. If he comes here, he has to look at the situation and understand the ownership situation, to understand. You just had Sean Payton last week say that he's had prospective owners talk to him about possibly coming in to Washington as soon as they are named the owners. Okay? Why would Eric Bieniemy want to put himself in a situation where he's barely going to have 1 year on the job at best? He might not even make it to May. Okay, he might sign a contract and a new owner comes in next week or in 2 weeks. It's possible. It's 10% or less. And he's out of a job again because the new owners come in and they want to tear the whole thing down. I don't think that's likely. But even if he makes it through the year, I just don't see a new owner coming in here and saying status quo. Let's keep it the way it is. I just don't buy it. So he has to look at that and say, I'm going to go get basically a rookie quarterback, right? With an organization that's going to blow me out in a year anyway, pretty much no matter what I do, unless we go on a Super Bowl run. Why would I go there? Why would I do that? For basically a lateral move, and you can say it's more responsibility, but in the eyes of the NFL,
it's an OC to OC.
OC to OC, unless they give him another title like assistant head coach.
Yeah, which they probably would. And a lot of people are bringing up this from like Ant-Man here. EB could have a chance to become head coach here if Ron doesn't manage game well. And EB also has a chance regardless, kind of like you said, when it comes to the head coaching change, or not the head coaching, the ownership change. Mm-hmm. Let's say it doesn't happen as soon as we all think, which is hopefully here within the next couple of weeks. And then in March, we get the official voting, and then you have, a quick turnover because the owner wants to make a splash. They're not going to run, 1 year under Ron Rivera and a lame duck season. But so none of that happens. We don't get this and the new owner until much later. Okay. So we do get Ron Rivera, and EB does sign on, and Sam Howell has a good year, a productive year, but the team maybe doesn't do well. Another 7-10 type season. Doesn't he have a shot if Sam Howell does well at becoming the head coach?
Nope.
Under new ownership? You don't think so?
Nope. 0.1, because you always got to have at least a little bit. No, of course he's not gonna. They're gonna bring in a guy under the regime that they just blew out because just because
the offense wasn't the problem though in this situation. The offense did well. Your young QB performed well, and you never know. By the way, the Commandees absolutely. The double paychecks is a good reason to come here to Washington. Sign a 5-year deal, guaranteed. Make sure that's guaranteed money. Knowing that you're going to get cut, I'll do that.
Okay. I mean, I guess so, but he can, yeah. But, and by the way, that it doesn't work that way. Can I just add that it doesn't work that way? If let's just say, for example, he gets 5 years, $5 million total, right? Which is probably what an offensive coordinator gets nowadays, $1 million a year, something like that. Right?
More than that for your elite ones. He'll make more than $1 million a year. Yes.
Okay. Let's just say it's $1 million a year. Okay. And they fire him after 1 year. Okay. And then he goes to Houston to be the offensive coordinator. He doesn't get double the paychecks. That's not how it works in the NFL. Okay. The difference between what he made here and what he makes in his new spot is covered by the old team. So if he gets $2 million over there and he's under contract here, He'll get $2 million, but Washington has to pay $1 million of it. They don't get double paychecks. That's not how it works in the NFL. Okay. When you get another job, now, if he wants to sit home, he can collect the $1 million every year. But if he goes and gets another job, it offsets. That's how it works in the NFL for coaches. A lot of people don't realize that. So there is no double or whatever.
It's why some coaches will just take a year off or go to the college ranks, because then that doesn't matter. And then they can pull in that check for not doing anything for the team. Now, a lot of people seem to be complimenting you in your thought process.
Oh, yeah? All right.
The 414 though.
That was right after killing me. So it all evens out.
The 414 though says the very reasons you are speaking, Stoner, could very well be said about any offensive coordinator, in my honest opinion. It's a 1 year for any guy to accept the OC position. And as has been mentioned, the Chiefs are promoting Matt Nagy, no doubt.
Okay.
So he's not staying in Kansas City. He's got to move on.
Not true.
Why not Washington?
Well, that's not true. If you have other guys who are stepping up in the game or are without a job, who are desperate. They're not desperate, but you know what I mean? Like the guys that we talked about before, the Zampese, that's a promotion for him. That's totally different than a lateral move for a guy who's trying to become a head coach. That's the whole difference between those. So if you get a Zampese or a Shermer, who I think was a quarterback's coach this past year.
He has been an OC, but he was
right this past year. He was a quarterback. So he's trying to work his way back up. So that's the difference. If some of those guys get the job, or Greg Roman, who is currently out of a job, and I guess technically Bieniemy is, but if nothing works out for him, I'm sure Andy Reid will bring him back to be the OC again. But that's the difference between Eric Bieniemy coming here and another guy getting a job. So that's kind of where I kind of counter what the 414 was saying.
By the way, Pat Shermer was the offensive coordinator for the Denver Broncos in 2020, 2021.
What was he last year? Was he even
not seeing where he was last year?
He was out in the street. Yeah.
Not on the Wikipedia. I could have sworn he had a role last year.
So those other guys, they'll take that OC job because it's again, as I said, they're on their way. They're trying to climb their way back up. But nobody's gonna. I don't think. That's why I think it's crazy for Bieniemy to come here. It's not really a promotion, and it's putting yourself in a bad position for your career.
Sure. I
just don't see
not necessarily going to give you that opportunity to prove yourself. Now, these are all reasons why you'd be crazy. I think anybody has to be crazy to come to Washington, Stoner. Mm-hmm. Let's say they all forgo those things. They all forget all this extra stuff. Who do you want? Who is it that you want to see calling plays for Sam Howell or QB1 for Washington with an offense that we thought was gonna be pretty darn good last year?
Yeah. Well, so who do I want between those two?
No,
or kind of who's available right now?
Yeah, who do you want that's out there that they've interviewed? I mean, they've interviewed a dozen or so candidates at this point.
Yeah, I think most of them are gone. I think like the Thomas Davis, I think he's got a job, and Stutesville, I think he's got a job, guys like that. I think, of course, Zampese is available. Of course, Roman is available. I think Shermer's still available. And then EB, right? If it was my choice and none of this other crap played into it, I'd want the guy who's won 2 Super Bowls with the most prolific offense, maybe in the history of the NFL, and has worked under the most prolific offensive coach in the NFL for the last 5 or 6 years. Of course, I'd want Eric Bieniemy. Something had to rub off from Andy Reid to him at some point, whether his duties were calling every single play or not. He's been there. He's been in that building, and they've been super successful. He's won 2 Super Bowls in 4 years.
It is funny to me because teams are more willing to, promote a tight end coach or a running back coach into an offensive coordinator position than take their chances with Bieniemy, who maybe hasn't been calling plays or whatnot, but like you said, he's been in the room with the successful offense. I think they ranked top 5. Now, granted, they have this generation's best quarterback,
GOAT. Yeah,
right,
mm-hmm.
and Patrick Mahomes, but still the offense is humming with Bieniemy in that position. So you gotta go with that, right? Now there are some merits, I think, to the others. I think Roman, could really do something with the running attack, and you'd probably be able to make use of Sam Howell's legs. I saw an interesting stat. I wish I would have saved it. Washington was 4th in rushing attempts, but like 28th in like the efficiency. Greg Roman fixes that. Maybe you can double dip, Stoner. What about EB as offensive coordinator, and Roman comes in as the run game coordinator,
and maybe Zampezi's the passing game coordinator, or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate that. Bring in as much as you can, as much knowledge as you can to try and get this quarterback situation figured out.
Yeah, I think Zampezi's biggest thing is that Sam Howell, has worked with him, and you probably are able to bridge that second year a little bit better for the QB who you're going to be thrusting into a QB1 position. And then Pat Shurmur, I really didn't have anything good to say about him. Yeah. So if you can think of something, let me know.
Nothing for him. But and I think Roman would probably be pretty good. But he, like you said, he's kind of a run game guy. He's a tight end, work your tight ends and your running game and all that. As Shane Steichen said when he took the job, where did he take the job? Arizona?
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Yep.
Yeah. What did he say when he got there? He said, you pass to score points and you run to finish the game or whatever.
Win the game, yeah.
To win the game, right? That's what offensive football is in the NFL in the last 10 years. That's what it's turned into. You pass to score, you run to win. And so I want passing first and then run game. I don't care about the Brian Robinsons and the Gibsons of the world. I care about.
You didn't get killed for that opinion. I was surprised.
No, I didn't.
You had a lot of people come to your defense on that one. I'm going to address this real quick from Michael. Michael saying, I have heard Bieniemy doesn't interview well. I think a lot of us have heard that. Now, I want to point out, though, a lot of us have heard it because somebody just kind of threw it out there, right?
Yeah.
He's interviewed for a lot of head coaching positions. He's been left out, and people said there's got to be something. Maybe he doesn't interview.
Well, what is it? Well, what is it?
And that's what happened was someone was just like, well, maybe he didn't interview well, and then that's what people are like, yeah, he doesn't interview well. He doesn't interview well. And that became kind of the truth of it.
Yeah,
but we don't know that. We don't know that that's the case. There is something to it. There's a lot of smoke there. I'm not going to say I'm super excited about if EB comes to Washington, but I mean, you got to be able to score more than 20 points a game.
He's had 17 head coach interviews, 17, and he's 0 for 17. There's something. Now he's had some issues in his past, but that was 20 years ago.
Sure.
He had a bunch of them, but they were just, he's matured, obviously. He hasn't had those issues, but still, why is he 0 for 17? And somebody said, both coordinators for Philadelphia got jobs, right? And they lost the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric Bieniemy won his second in 4 years, and he doesn't have a head coaching job. Why? Well, there's something there that's not out in the public. I don't think it's because he doesn't interview well. After a certain point, you look at what he's done, and you just say he should get hired simply by the merits of what you see on the field. But there's something there. Yep. Why two coordinators from the losing team get head coaching jobs? He doesn't get a sniff, and he won for the second time.
Second time in 4 years, 5 successful years in a row as an offensive coordinator. Yeah, I'm not saying there's not smoke there. I'm just saying that I don't know. The interview thing just started off because someone happened to say it, and then it just stuck. But there's a lot of question marks there. We'll see who Washington does, and we'll be talking about who Washington picks later. Now, Stoner, I happen to notice you're sporting some Sparty gear there.
Yeah, man.
Obviously a decision on your part, and I know you want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a little support out to Spartan Nation. With the tragic events that happened earlier this week, where 3 students were killed on campus with that shooting. And I just wanted to throw a little support out to all those who are there. I've got family all over in that area. In fact, I believe I have 3 or 4. What do you call it, like when your cousins have kids? Are they like your second cousins?
Yeah, I think they're
Is that what
second
they
cousins.
are?
Yeah.
So your cousins' kids.
Yeah.
So I have like 3 or 4 who are, currently students at Michigan State.
Or their cousins once removed. That's the whole.
Yeah, see, I don't know. Whatever it is, my cousin's kids. I have 3 or 4 of them at least that are there, current students there, and they're all okay, obviously. But it's just a scary situation. And what really struck me, and I don't know if you noticed this, but there was one student who was there, who was like, when they were doing interviews, they were standing in the background, that was part of a mass shooting in high school just last year. Yep. From Oxford High School in Michigan, right? Survived that and now is dealing with this. And then there was another student. The shooting happened right across the street from her, right? She was in elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, when that school, had that whole issue, the mass shooting in 2012. And now she's reliving it again. She's gotten out of that town. She goes to college and it happens again. And we're not going to get all political here, but Jesus, something's got to, this is out of control. Just want to throw a little shout out to Spartan Nation and show a little support.
Our hearts and thoughts are out there with them. I'm not going to even end it on a message of for the channel support, but we do appreciate all those who have supported our channel. Of course, we are live every Wednesday at 7:30 here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And wherever you support us, we do appreciate it, as we are also audio platforms as well. And you'll catch us tomorrow talking about our next QB. So you can check that out right here on YouTube. But until next time,
Eric Bieniemy, OC, mark it down.
Be a fan.